Okay, I think we are ready to start. So, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us today on the release of this Deelpan Impact Report and Feasibility Assessment. We truly appreciate your time and taking your time to be with us. I'll be your host. My name is Alwyn. I'm the technical manager at Seriti. And let me just give you a quick overview of what this next hour will hold in for us. So we'll start with a brief background of the Deelpan and the context and how we got to Deelpan as a town, which will be shared by our CEO, Juanita Partesi. After that, we will move to the presentation from our team that did the feasibility study and the impact assessment. Once the presentation is completed, I'll introduce the rest of the team that is working so tirelessly in Deelpan for the last 3 years. And then I'll open the floor for some questions and discussions. So please feel free to note down your notes and questions, and then we will raise them in a Q&A session. So I will start by saying that our journey in Deelpan started almost 3 years ago. This community, if you don't know, is located in the rural Northwest province. It's nested between the towns of Sannieshof and Lichtenburg. And together with the local farming community, we developed a social solution that has become a catalyst for building and strengthening the local agricultural value chain in Deelpan. We initiated this impact assessment study to better understand what we've achieved, the social economic impact created, and how we can continue to maximize the impact of the multifunctional agri-node. It's been an amazing journey, but to tell us a little bit more about that, I'm going to hand over to Juanita, our CEO, to set the scene and provide some background on the Deelpan and the journey that brought us to where we are today. Thank you, Juanita.
Hello, thanks, Alwyn, and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am super excited today because Deelpan has always been, and always will have a very special place in my heart. So Deelpan was a project that, okay, I'm going to tell the story, although it wasn't on the script because I love telling the story. In about just after the flooding, we were approached by the IDC to go out and assist small businesses in Deelpan that had been impacted by the flooding. And I so vividly remember the day driving out to Deelpan, and one, I didn't know where it was on the map, and two, didn't realize how far it was from Johannesburg. And after a very long drive, when we got there, was literally gobsmacked at the fact that we couldn't find any small business. A complete rural community with very little opportunity. And we struggled to find small business that were registered, that met the eligibility criteria to tap into this grant funding. And driving back to Johannesburg, we were like, this is the area that we need to work in, because it's an area where development results are very hard to achieve, number one. And number two, there is no opportunity for young people in Deelpan. And blow me over, we 2 weeks later were successful in the Social Employment Fund. And immediately we put Deelpan on our list of areas that we want to implement the Social Employment Fund. And that began this journey of setting up what we call the multifunctional agri-node. And today it marks two achievements. One is the impact study of what we have achieved in the last 2 years and how collaboration with the Tribal Council and a few donors have made this possible. And the second thing is around the feasibility study, which looks ahead and shows what it will take to get to scale, how we can replicate this model in other communities if all role players, national government, municipalities, etc., were part of the design of a multifunctional agri-node. So the collaboration between Seriti, our social partners, our local champions, our private sector donors, who believed in a simple truth, that when communities are given the skills and the opportunities, they don't just survive, they thrive. And that is a story that we want to tell today. So I'm super excited that all of you have taken the time to join us. And I look forward to this. And, Deelpan is not the end point. It is a starting point for reimagining what rural communities can become. So looking forward to today. And thank you once again for joining. Thanks, Albain.
Thank you, Juanita. That was perfect. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. First off, we will have Gail Kasere, which will take us through the key findings of the insights of the impact assessment. Gail is an experienced evaluator with over 15 years of socioeconomic development across Africa. She holds a master in monitoring and evaluation from Stellenbosch University and has led large-scale evaluation in agriculture, trade, food security, and social enterprise. She's passionate about ensuring evaluations like this one lead to practical solutions for communities and scalable opportunities for growth. And straight after that, we're going to hand over to Tinashe Kapuya, and he's going to talk to us more about the feasibility assessment. Tinashe is a PhD. He's an agricultural and development economist and a value chain analyst with over 15 years in field experience across Africa. His passion is on providing data-driven insights, which guide the formulation of transformative interventions that bring solutions to rural communities. Again, very direct related to what we do today and what we did in Deelpan, and mainly those contributing to food security and employment creation. Tinashe works with various think tanks across Africa, but has also worked in South Africa and the private sector and in development consulting. So Gail, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through the impact assessment report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alvin. Thank you so much, Juanita, for setting the space. The tone for us. I'm just going to quickly come on camera so that people can see who Gail is. I hope you can all see me. Good morning, and thank you all so very much for being here. I really am so excited to be talking about this activity that we took on with my colleague, Tinashe. It was really, and like what Alvin said, they actually echoed exactly what I was going to say. I'm really passionate about evaluation. I love it when projects, or an intervention is developed, and I love to come and check, and really assess. Is it really working? What's working? What have been the changes? What is the impact? So when we're called into this exercise, I really jumped on it. I was very, very passionate to take it on. And exactly as Juanita also really outlined, when I also drove all the way to Deelpan, I was also shocked, to really see that there isn't that much, not many small businesses there. And I think the high rate of unemployment and poverty really, for me, got me even more, attached and very married to this project. So I just want to take you a little bit about, okay, fine, what thing did we do? So once we got the assignment, we really, and we got to understand what the multifunctional node was really trying to get at. It was trying to improve food security. It was trying to really create, sustainable employment for the youth, for women, and for the community at large. So we sat down with my colleague and we thought, you know what, we really want to measure the success of this multifunctional agricultural node. We really want to also, in measuring the success, we also want to be able to identify barriers and lessons learned. We also, even when we're thinking about next steps, I love it also when projects, implement something and they're thinking of scalability, they're thinking of ownership, and then having the community take it on. So you really wanted to assess, how feasible is this from a market perspective, from a financial perspective, and social and environment perspective. So we sat down, and in terms of really looking at the contribution of the project, we set to talk to about 81 households, because just being there, my understanding and appreciation has how this project had really enhanced households. So we wanted to talk to any household that was, impacted by this a model and project in any way. So we also sought to speak to 48 farmers, and we also did key informant interviews. How I loved interacting with the tribal council, with cooperatives, the supermarkets, input providers, or within the area. So that's what we did. And we really wanted to harvest for outcomes. We wanted to really look at what really has changed. How has this project even contributed to change? So that's what we set out to do. At a glance, we really were, MFAN at a glance, is not just a pilot, right? It's really a rural transformation, and it's an enterprise incubation. And really, I like how it's embedded in traditional governance. So there are 3 active cooperatives, 60 smallholder farmers that the project has been working with, 250 plus jobs also created through the Social Employment Fund. And again, like I said, very embedded in the tribal council and the community governance. That is MFAN at a glance. So once we set out our exercise, did a household survey and the focus group discussions I've mentioned and all of that, we now wanted to see what exactly has been the change. So the key evaluative highlights of the project for me, I think one I want to really appreciate was, how the project really enhanced food security, right? Dietary diversity. We're talking to households that would tell you that in terms of protein, it was only literally eggs if possible, but no, that was not even the case. There was really high food insecurity levels there. But then from the project, you'd hear that they're now actually consuming eggs, for example, if they don't have money to go and buy chickens. So that was quite interesting, an interesting take. And then from an economic inclusion and livelihood evolution, I want to appreciate that.
Gail, just let me interject. I'm controlling the slide, so you have to let me know when to move and when to...
Oh, so sorry, Tinashe. I think you're still on Juanita's slide. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you want to, where are we at now on this slide? So just give me a
So
sense.
the slide that you have right now is Juanita's slide.
Okay. So
we are starting from the evaluation.
Okay.
And I've spoken about the approach, how we, interact with the 81 farmers, and how we, yes. And then I've also touched on, which is now the next slide, thank you. That is at a glance exactly. And then now we are moving on to what were the results. Thank you.
So this is it. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Okay, and then so what I was saying already was that the food security levels that increased for me is something that I wanted to note, that, the households that we're talking about were actually, indicating that they're no longer experience any anxiety about food shortages. Their dietary, their diets have even diversified to include eggs if they don't have money to buy, for example, chicken. So here we're talking about how there was a lack in protein in terms of their diet composition. And then in terms of economic inclusion, still on the same slide, the evolution that I noted for me was that most farmers had actually moved from stipends, right, to actually generating their income through their own enterprise-driven agriculture activities. I liked hearing stories, for example, of how some women have even taken some of that income and started, let's say, other businesses like clothing businesses, selling clothes. So there was a very high resounding going when it came to increase in income. And Yeah, and then in terms of livelihood evolution, I already spoke about how, other women would actually make a note of the fact that, their kids have been in school, even at school. There's also the fact that the project itself, much of the project was also being, the uptakers of it would be schools, would be clinics. So even in terms of dietary, improvements, they were actually also echoed there. So just the power of how the project went beyond just farmer households and other households, but into schools, into clinics, was very commendable. And then when you look at social return on investment, right, you would see that levels of poverty, unemployment, well-being, health had also improved. And the fact that, income generation being the biggest one, that really formed one of the main results. The return on investment went beyond just it being about money, but about actually restoring dignity as well. If you could move to the next slide, Nathan. Already mentioned that we really zoomed into the households a lot. And what I liked about this is that though we had a sample, we focused on, yes, the direct households, farmer households, but we also randomly selected other households. And it was just amazing to see how other households had actually benefited. So we looked at the number of, for example, the number of farmers that have been trained, and how there was gender inclusion there. So a lot of females that you'd see coming for those farmer trainings. Others would just come, for example, for business skills trainings, and they'll go and use it in other ways. So that appreciation there was noted when we did the evaluation. The project in itself, just seedling production, and even the income that was also generated from the seedling production was also very commendable. Households, again, I've already touched on households producing their own food is one of the, I think, the shifting change that we saw. And also just the access to protein, I've already mentioned, the green vegetables and other, tomatoes, etc., just improve their diet. So if we could also, again, move to the next slide, please. So in terms of impacts on household, I think one of the things that the multifunctional agricultural node has significantly catalyzed the local systems change. There's been change in terms of governance structures, how they engage the tribal council, the cooperatives, how they also, just them producing, how that impacted households. And how even when these farmers were taught certain skills, let's say composting, those were actually also seen being implemented and in households. So that actually in itself allow for households to actually grow their own food, sell their surplus, and then move from depending on a stipend or a grant even to actually generating their own income. Next slide, please. I think when it comes to here, I just want you to just have an appreciation. Now we're talking numbers, and I'm also a storyteller. I love numbers because that's the evidence. But I just want you to now see that 91% of households now grow their own food. I think many households, if you just pass in, there was a garden, or there is now a garden, as a result of, the multifunctional agri-node, right? And then 95% of the participants really aspire to formalize enterprises, or they want to be part of a formalized cooperative that would, again, allow them to generate income. Again, the tribal council, also from one of the achievements, again, really initiated new government protocols to really show that, how they're distributing and how the land is being managed by those who have access to it really has benefits for its community. I think that was one of, for me, a passionate takeaway, how the land is working for its people. I think that was just awesome. Next slide, please. And I just want to, I think we'd all think about, okay, fine, Gail, you're showing us all the numbers, all the, great things. So what exactly ensured success? And from us, when we went with Tinashe, we realized that the local ownership, how proactive the engagement is between Seriti and the leadership and the Deelpan our community members and the tribal council. I think for me, that provided legitimacy and secured, access and cultural relevance. I think one of the key drivers of success, again, was how I mentioned the climate smart practices, some of the agricultural practices that I found farmers and cooperatives actually implementing, like the composting of, I didn't know that chicken, could be used for composting. And that is quite effective than going to, especially when there's not much access to, income or money or finances. Right, so just being innovative. And again, one of the key drivers of success is the partnership that Seriti, when they came in, it's a trust-based partnership. That really also was a key driver of success. They came in and understood what the community issues were. They listened to the voices of the community and went ahead and literally walking hand in glove. So that co-creation that happened there was one of the key drivers of success. It wasn't an idea that was formulated in the office. It was an idea that was built between Seriti itself and the Deelpan community. And I think for me, that was one of the key takeaways. Another one was a driver of success is how when you're on the ground, you might identify, okay, we have a challenge there. And it was the feedback loop of how the project itself was able to really come and then make changes as they were seeing things that needed changes. So I think that was one of the drivers of success. They didn't just implement a project 2 years ago and left. They actually monitored the challenges, the successes, and came in and added more, and hence that's why it was very successful. On to the next slide, please, Tinashe. So I think one of the things we saw on the ground was that, okay, there's this co-creation, there's this buy-in that we're seeing, right? And how there are different structures or institutional structures that came in to really work alongside Seriti, whether it be funders, it be supermarkets, it be the tribal council. So there were different infrastructures that came in to really work alongside the project, and that is the reason why there's success that we've just noted in the impact study. And I cannot help but to stress or to actually confess that had there been other, departments or businesses or private sector, the NGO sector, government, departments as well, such as extension services, input providers, technology service providers, I cannot help but stress that if all of those elements were also in, what kind of success would we be looking at in Deelpan? I'm sure it would be mind-blowing, because just with these three, if you see on your left, input providers, the physical, and then the markets, and then our donors, just with that, we are actually noting this impact. However, I think it's quite a call to stewardship, if I may put it that way, that it would be greater impact if other departments would join in. And next slide, please, Nathan. So as I wrap up my presentation, I'm thinking, okay, fine, as I told you in the beginning, I like to always come and assess impact, but I always want to learn and see, okay, what can we take away from what this project has done? And for me, when we sat down with Tinashe, we're just brainstorming what we passionately observed on the ground, right? And we realized that one of the key takeaways is that I think dignity drives retention. How the project came in and engaged the community has given the community a sense of pride and restoration of self-worth. So I think that was, for me, a key takeaway. And I also cannot help but actually also make a note of this, that land legitimacy is important. Engaging the traditional authority, land allocation ensures that there's community buy-in and stability. And it's even better when the land is working for its people. The beneficiaries of it are the people. And I think that was one of the key takeaways. Again, also giving credit to this node, I won't lie, the amount of change and impact I saw as an evaluator of 15 years, I would observe this, I think in a fourth year, in a project that's in the fourth year or something like that. But I think it's how very focused and centered the project was on the community of Deelpan, and we know enterprise solutions do take long, but there is transition that we saw from initial trainings, but there's a bit of layering, so it needs patience, and then transitioning to, profitable sales and even income generation. Again, partnership and governance, I've already mentioned, I can't stress this enough, that there is really need. I think if we could all learn, personal lives, even that, co-creation, buy-in, you really need to work together. And really partnership strengthens and is the reason why this model actually also worked. And like I already mentioned before, that with those few partners, I can only imagine with more very deliberate and meaningful partnerships coming in on board what we could have noticed. Next slide, please. I think one of the things, as I just conclude, is that what I learned from this project is that it's really a transformative rural development model. It's people-centered ecosystem cultivating. Its emphasis on cooperative incubation. Its emphasis on upskilling the residents and the members of Deelpan, with let's say big climate smart agricultural practices. Its emphasis on co-ownership actually removes the dependency syndrome that we have observed over the last decades. Is one of the things that, to be honest, I marveled at this model. And I think, to be honest, I would want, as I hand over to my colleague, to just say, what has really been harvested from Deelpan is just more than crops. It really is about identity, resilience, and a vision for, rural renewal. So, and I hope that as we start talking about feasibility, we can start thinking about how we can really foster and come up with innovative models that leave our people empowered and not dependent on stipends, for example. So it is a call to stewardship for me. And hence, I'm very excited to now hand over. I'll turn it back again to Alvin, but now we're stepping into, is this feasible? Is it scalable? Thank you all so much for giving me your attention and your time. This, to me, was a very passionate project of mine I hold dearly. So hence, I was very excited to have this, the report even being launched. Thank you all so much.
Great.
Thanks, Gail. Tanashi, you ready?
Yes, I don't know how many minutes I have though. So I need you to tell me exactly what time I have, and then I can try to
You have 25 minutes.
Okay, good.
But please feel free to share, I think that's why we scheduled 1.5 hours so that we can have some fat. So don't worry, Tanashi. Thanks.
Fantastic. So colleagues, what you heard from Gail was a journey of moving a community from an aid and donor supported rural community to a community that is going towards self-reliance. And at the core of what we are trying to figure out when we are looking at the Deelpan Multi-Functional Agri-Node and all its innovations are two central questions. So the questions there are, is it feasible? And once we answer that question in the affirmative, then the next question is it scalable? Because what we are trying to identify here are elements of this model that can actually be transposed to other communities and achieve comparable impacts, if not exceeding what we have observed in the Deelpan community. So without wasting too much time, what you heard for the past 20 minutes was an impact assessment. And the question was, did we make an impact? And the answer is yes. Now, the next question is, is this approach going to work? Is it feasible? And under what conditions is it feasible? So what we can conclude very quickly around the multi-functional ag-node, it did boost livelihoods. It did have some food security impacts, and it has improved the ecosystem that enable local enterprises to flourish. What we did look at afterwards is what are the core areas that can define whether it's feasible or not. And across those areas, we used quantitative and qualitative assessments. And we used a very simple but effective mechanism or method, the traffic light system, red, amber, and green, to highlight where we see strengths and where we see weaknesses. And we looked at a number, we compiled all this information that we got from the impact evaluation, all the data from focus group discussions, from key informant interviews, from farmer characterization and assessments, from the household surveys. And then we came up with a very summarized version that I'm going to present here, but there's a lot of detail behind it, which we can discuss later. So question number one, is there a market? Are the markets there to allow this node to function effectively? And the question is, yes, there are markets, and most of these markets are in the local communities, but obviously local communities might not have that big enough demand pool that can allow more growth. So there is room for institutional buyers to demand products. So when we talk of institutional buyers, we're basically talking of supermarkets, we can talk of schools, we can talk of prisons, government institutions that are serving different programs. And we believe that there is room for those kind of institutions and those kind of actors to come in and offer the offtake agreements and contracts that can allow communities and this node to produce at scale. Markets that are local alone won't be able to stimulate the kind of growth that would see even higher returns. We know that the Ventersdorp, the close towns like Ventersdorp and also Mahikeng and we are not probably big enough, but we do know that there is potential for Joburg, Pretoria, Gauteng, those bigger markets, which are, however, associated with higher transport costs. But we have seen that with the level of efficiencies that are being attained at farm level, there might be room to absorb some of those high costs and still land our product in those bigger markets competitively. We've seen that in the production of chilies, for instance. Technically, we have some infrastructure that is in place, and Seriti and partners have been making plans to actually expand some of that infrastructure. We have seen cold storage equipment being landed there. We've seen tunnels being built. All of that in hub infrastructure is very, very critical to enabling all year round production and longer shelf life and storage. And that is, there's also potential for that to be expanded increase the scale. So from a financial perspective, the cost revenue models are indicating that returns are positive, particularly for fresh vegetables. We've seen farmers have a very high desire and affinity for and capability for producing fresh vegetables like cabbages, like tomatoes. At the node, we've seen a lot of, we've seen maize and watermelons as examples of crop enterprises that actually exhibit positive growth. Local markets, even at a wholesale price, are enabling the farmers and the node to actually turn a positive margin. When we go to other aspects of our feasibility assessment, the social aspect, I think Gail talked about issues of social cohesion. We have seen women's groups emerge, and there's a lot of decision-making and leadership coming out of the women that are in this community. There is a lot of high engagement among young people, and there is a lot of trust and legitimacy amongst the community when it's placed on the project. And that trust is very important in ensuring that the project is a catalyst for social cohesion. So we see that as quite a high rating on the social dimension of our feasibility. Moderate in the environmental aspects, but we do see quite a lot of climate smart practices that are very, very important. The issue of manure production, for instance, there is some innovative practices that we've observed where communities are actually doing their own manure, not even traditionally produced, not the typical manure that you see. I think there's like liquid manure that we saw there, where you can actually do some fancy vermiculture and agriculture there. So, and then what we've seen is how communities are turning that waste, that local waste, to improve soil fertility. And that is a very important part of that can be scaled out actually under the right conditions. So we see that as something that can be improved as well. So from an institutional and policy perspective, one of the things that anchors this node is the tribal council. The local leadership has provided inputs, have provided land, and they've been very, very central to facilitating the engagement between the node and the community. So we see that as a very feasible and highly rated element of the project. Moving towards, oh goodness, toward the next slide, I think what the node does is it is essentially being built on a foundation, a very, very strong foundation. There are elements that can definitely be expanded and improved, and innovations that can be scaled out. But also we see that there is not just the economic aspects of the impact that this project is making. We are seeing the social dimension. We are seeing improvements in dietary diversity and diet quality, because there's a lot of vegetables being grown there. We are seeing a lot of that infrastructure development that is coming in, and entrepreneurship as well, because the women's groups that are coming in are now trying to move from your traditional subsistence farming to a more surplus production geared towards commercial entities. So there's a whole lot of success that the node is actually building on, and that creates a very viable pathway for the node to actually segue into its next chapter for growth. We see the next chapter for growth as agro-processing, value-added interventions, value-added processes. So if you look at the fresh vegetable production dominant enterprises amongst the community, it behooves, I think, more of the node itself, as well as most players to invest a lot more in infrastructure that can extend the shelf life of the product and reduce post-harvest losses. What we have seen already is Seriti and partners investing in cold storage, and that cold storage pushes the intervention and the farmers into a higher tier of income earning, where more value can be extracted. You can sell a higher value products even and capture more of that value to the farmers. So you can produce throughout the season with your shade netting and your tunnels, and you can also keep that crop for longer through cold storage. So we are seeing a lot of processing, packaging, logistics being done within the community. And this is where I think the crux of the growth process comes in. You just remaining at the farm would not be able to unlock new dimensions of growth. So as the node grows, then you also need to expand market access. As I had mentioned, those institutional buyers, they come with a lot of requirements. They come with a lot of cold chain management systems and channels, and you also now need to diversify rather than relying solely on communities that are coming to buy from the farmers and from the node. You now need to just create a dedicated channel of formal buyers who can give you guaranteed contracts. So that is where we see the growth going. And I think Seriti has already seen the light. They are making inroads in that space. While we are seeing that effort to expand, we thought it would also be good to look at what others are doing elsewhere in South Africa. There are a number of initiatives where institutions or development practitioners are implementing different models. And some of these models vary in the type of interventions and the mechanisms or the theory of change, how they are moving about trying to make an impact. So we took I think about 6 or 7 different key players that are in this space who are doing work that has similar objectives, but very different intervention logics and also very different focus areas. And we're talking of institutions that are in the training and capacity building space. We are looking at institutions that are in the tech industry doing digital agri-market innovations. Some are in climate smart infrastructure or incubation models, or township economies, just trying to figure out how you can move a product and around the township economies. And then there were also enterprise development initiatives. We looked at all of those. And when we were drawing insights around what makes those models work, we came to a few principles that I think can guide the growth of the node. So the first thing is models that are likely to succeed are very integrated. They're not just looking at one particular issue. They're looking at a number of interventions that are addressing different constraints and bottlenecks. So linking each intervention with skills, with market access, with financial tools, and almost like an end-to-end value chain approach that significantly increases the chances of a model being viable and feasible. Then we have the market-led production as a principle. We sometimes get into the temptation of growing things that we are accustomed to or things that we like, without looking at the demand side of the supply of the market. Sorry, and in this instance, we find that if you are responding to the market cycles, and you're looking at who are the buyers and what are they looking for, and you try to innovate and design an intervention that responds to market needs, you are also more likely to succeed. And Hello Choice is one of the examples that we picked up there with their technology, agri-digital marketplace technology for price discovery. Then there is the capacity building angle. In many instances, you find that innovations or projects are coming in with a big capacity building intervention, which is geared towards training, mentorship, particularly in the business side or the financial side of your model. Because a lot of our communities are very, very accustomed maybe to growing crops, maybe particularly at subsistence level, and they have not mixed that subsistence experience with a business mindset and a mindset to commercialize. So capacity building, phased, of course, because you need also to have those farmers grow sustainably until they reach the end point. So we found that projects that have phased capacity building have a very good chance of succeeding. And then we look at the governance and accountability angle. I think this is one of the things that have defined success for many of our, when we look at the different production dominant interventions. You need a community buy-in, you need trust, and you need your tribal councils or community elders to be very much involved. I think a lot of the land tenure systems in our communities tend to be communal and not very formalized. But then from a governance perspective, and as you start dealing more with the formal markets, and when you're trying to get funding, that's when I think the land agreements need to be now formalized, and you need to strengthen that land tenure system. Getting land use rights without ownership rights sometimes impedes entities from getting access to commercial finance, and this is one of the things that projects need to get into, to take into account. The blended finance models, I think combining grants with concessionary loan arrangements, and then using that as a basis to generate income using sustainable production models is one of the things that we think are very, very important, and they're the cornerstone of all our interventions to work. And then the climate smart practices, of course, we are moving towards a landscape where our weather and our climate is changing. So we need to incorporate very specific interventions that can hedge against shifts in weather. At the Deelpan model, there's tunnel farming, and they do composting, as I have mentioned, and there is a lot of climate resilience building that is already factored into that model. There is very efficient water use, of course, because of the tunnels that they've put there and the infrastructure that they've put there. So these are the principles that we identified, and we said for a node to expand and to expand sustainably and to be able to expand and grow without an over-reliance on donor funding. These are the principles that have to be taken into account to build an multifunctional agri-node for the future. Now, that segues into the 6 areas that I think we need to also include in a roadmap. There is this model that is called, they call it hub and spoke, or centralized processing units, where you pilot a model in a community, and you draw in all the community people, spreading the technology around, using all these different insights to get your community to learn about the different types of technology. So centralized and piloted production and processing units can work, especially if you want to get your farmers to adopt certain technologies. Formalized land governance, I think I've mentioned that already. And then the capacity building, that's more of your incubation and training your farmers when you are establishing their startups and guiding them towards commercialization. Launching a development fund. This is a very important part that can allow, I think, it can allow communities to tap into a local fund without necessarily having to go to the bank, because and it can be built into a blended finance program. I think the way these can be operationalized is different, but especially if you have a bunch of cooperatives and organized farmers who are seeking to get access to capital or inputs, then offtake agreements, obviously, and then the governance aspect of our models. Those need to be in the roadmap that can take this multifunctional agricultural node into a full social enterprise that is self-sustaining. I'll repeat what Gail said. We have a multifunctional agricultural node. It is not just a farming project. It is an integrated set of institutions, of actors, and that are all trying to address the critical challenges in our communities: employment, food insecurity. And it's a catalyst for us to get to address not just the economic challenge that is caused by food insecurity and joblessness, but it also promotes social cohesion. It also gets communities to have a sense of ownership and a sense of self-worth. So what that makes the node is not just a farming project. It is a mindset shift, a transformative intervention that can take communities from donor or aid dependency to self-reliance. With that, colleagues, I'll stop there. I think I've talked for quite a while. Alvin, you've been very gracious. I thought I was going to have 5 minutes only, but I talked for quite a bit there. Thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Tanashi. You were safe with 2 minutes, so well done. Thank you both, Gail and Tanashi, for very comprehensive presentations and really taking us through this journey. Before we move into Q&As, just some housekeeping. We would like to answer everybody's questions and kind of get into discussion. So when I call out your name, so please unmute and please feel free to engage with the team. Otherwise, just put your questions in the chat. I see there's already some questions, and we will try and answer all questions. But if we run out of time, don't worry. As you know, everything's recorded, and we will answer everybody's questions and reply to everybody that's on this call. So now I'd like to introduce the rest of the team that's been central to Deelpan's success and all the work that's happening there. Can I please, when I call your name, just video or put your videos on so that people can see you. First of all, it's Wanga Poli. He's our Agri Enterprise and Value Chain Lead at Seriti. Dr. Sipesigle. He's the Seriti Work and Grow Program Lead. Elizabeth Ralefatane, which is the Project Implementation Lead. And then our Agri-Node Manager, which is running the daily operations at the Agri-Node, Tiru Ramadi. With him is Itumeleng Koza, which is the administrator at the node. And of course, Juanita, the CEO, that keeps us all on our toes. So as we go into Q&A, which we already have some questions. We're going to share some pictures of the Deelpan journey. This is from breaking ground to the construction of the infrastructure and all of it that makes the multifunctional agri-node such a beacon of hope and resilience in the community. Reaching this point has been a real milestone for not just for us, but also for Deelpan. The node is now fully off-grid. It's powered by its own solar capacity, borehole with real systems put in place to ensure that we use even the water very sparingly and economically. This foundation laid a kickstart the agro processing that's already happening. We've installed full drip irrigation. We've got drying machines for the chilies. We expanded poultry production. We formalized compost production and packaging. And all of this, all these steps is helping to strengthen the local value chain, as I explained in the beginning, and to create real opportunities for the community and the agricultural community in Deelpan. Through all of that, we've also created an app called the Community Fresh app, which was designed and developed specifically for local production, for local consumption, and to bring buyers and sellers, to bring small-scale farmers in the fold with technology, but to link them to buyers and to be able to sell their produce. Okay, so now I'm going to open the floor for questions and reflections. And then we're going to play the slideshow to just show you some of the pictures of this journey. So I think the first question that we got, which was quite good, was, and I think I'm relating this to Juanita, is how did we go about getting buy-in from all the stakeholders? Juanita.
Thank you, Alban. I think here we started listening. We went out to Deelpan, we saw a problem, we approached the tribal council, but we started listening. The tribal council and community members were engaged from the very beginning, not as beneficiaries, but as co-owners of the vision that we had for Deelpan. So we respected the local governance structures, we involved the traditional leaders in our decision-making, we made sure that community priorities shaped the design of what we wanted to do. And then on the funder side, we demonstrated accountability with evidence and results. And I think that showed that for every rand that we invested, that there was a return in both economic and social value. So the bottom line, it was trust, transparency, and co-creation were the cornerstones. This takes time, but this is a critical element in getting a project to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. That was nice and comprehensive. The second question, can I ask maybe Sipe? So Gail mentioned the benefit beyond just farmers. How was this achieved?
Thank you so much, Mr. A. Good morning, colleagues. This is Sipe. I think in brief, I think even the previous speakers have been emphasizing or saying it again and again, the issue around co-creation of the project. So I think that's one of the key success factors for the success of this program, and also for the impact to spread even beyond the farmers. So by involving local voices in designing and also in the implementation of such initiatives, it is very, very important, because at the end of the day, it's about people. I think it was also mentioned earlier on that this model is designed, in a way which is people-centered, right? So it must address the needs, of the people, on the ground, of which that can expand beyond, farmers. For instance, if we're talking about food security, we're referring to the entire community, not only, the farmers. So by equipping and capacitating the farmers, that is also indirectly benefiting the community, as well. And this the participatory approach that we have also adapted, it's really working to expand or to extend the impact to even broader audiences, involving youth when it comes to knowledge exchange, access to resources, because there was also a mention of cooperatives, so encouraging that a cooperative model also enhances the community cohesion, as well. So I think by co-designing or co-creating the project and implementing it together with the community, really fostered the ownership, and also it holds potential for sustainability. So hence the impact was not only streamlined to farmers, but also expanded to to the entire community, as well. It's because we have this participatory approach that is really playing a very, very important role in strengthening the initiatives on the ground and ensuring ownership. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks, Deelpan. The other question we got from Nozi was, what would your advice be for community-based organizations who wants to replicate this sort of project? That is a big one. How do we replicate this? Juanita?
I think my advice would be start small, but start with the community. When we started this node, we only asked for 2 hectares of land. Today, we have over 15 hectares. So we also built on what already exists. So there were a lot of participants in Deelpan that were doing gardens in a very small scale, basically subsistence gardens, backyard gardens, micro gardens. So we didn't go impose a solution. We co-created with them. We started by putting in a lot of effort through the Social Employment Fund on training and mentorship, where people gained both the know-how on using or transitioning to better farming practices, agroecological practices, and then the confidence to do it. So the partnerships was essential. The link with funders, the link with the tribal council, and those who shared our values. I think that was very important. But most importantly, I think it's patience. Development is hard. It is hard work. Transformation takes time. And I saw in the chat, somebody said, what were your results over 3 years? But actually, we've only been there for 2 years. What we're showing you and what we're celebrating today is a 2-year journey. So throughout this journey, we celebrated the small wins, and that helped us build the momentum for bigger change. And as you will see in the slideshow, like the photos that's currently on the screen with chilies and watermelons, etc. These are things that we did this year. So this journey in terms of replicating a model does take time. but never give up. Just never give up. I think if you keep bringing all the actors together, you can achieve something amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. So the next question from Leroy, Tanisha, I think, from your study and the assessment you've made, he's asking, what are the primary strengths and challenges of the Deelpan Multi-Functional Agri-Node model in terms of financial viability? So this is now in the absence of the social grant and stipends, and how might these impact the scalability for value-added processing? So if you can give us 3 to 5 main strengths based on this question. Thanks, Tanisha.
I'm going to give maybe some non-traditional answers and I'll also ask Gail. There are things that were also in the evaluation that pointed to some very interesting insights. So one of the things that we think was impacting the financial returns, by and large, is that there was land, right? So there are communities, there are not communities, there are cooperatives that were working together to help each other out in terms of access to land and so forth. So I think there's the issue of access to land, more land than what you might have as a single farmer. Then there is the issue of not just one particular crop grown. You are growing multiple intercropping, and you are also growing those crops throughout in multiple cycles. So that kind of increases your revenue streams. Then there is also the issue of seedlings, access to seedlings, and the node was growing a lot of seedlings that were being sold to the community, and also this is a very, very important, because your seedlings determine your yields. If you have good quality seedlings, then you do some good sound agronomic practice, you can actually get some good yields without necessarily investing too much in other inputs. So that, I think those are a few that I identified. There is the issue of markets was as part of a financial viability question, because you know what your market determines your price in many cases. That's probably where I think the critical issue is. How do you move beyond your semi-subsistence model? Because a lot of farmers were producing for themselves, and then the surplus they would just sell to the community, and that's where I think we now need to put a bit of structure and a bit of certainty around pricing, around how much farmers can sustainably grow without losing a lot of their product to rot, because and that's why I think Seriti has invested quite a bit in cold storage, and also getting some of that product and packing it for markets that are a little bit beyond the community. Gail, I will invite you to. I don't know if I was accurate in some of my sentiments, but please go ahead. And more.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Tanisha. You were accurate. I think one of the primary strengths, like you say, seedlings, and just production. I think we can see how much is being produced and what has come out of that. And I think in terms, for me, another one strength in terms of financial viability, if I understood the question very well, was the issue of cost savings. So reinvesting in structures like shed nets and tunnels, and even like the composting, was another one that I felt like was a good strength. And then I think when actually touched on the infrastructure investments, the solar installation, etc., that was one of the strengths as well. In terms of market potential, there is potential, but it's supermarkets and it's other markets. And I saw a question, but I don't want to digress. But we have to think about who is going to be on the other end. Do we want to feature Deelpan Multi-Functional Node in another area close by, so that in terms of transportation, so there is potential. There are ready buyers, the supermarkets around there. Now, because of the storage improvements and all of that, we can go beyond other areas. So that I was very excited when I was hearing all of those improvements that I heard. In terms of challenges, Nash has already touched on it. It's in terms of financial viability, the low farmer incomes that we've, kind of, observed. And when we observe that, you then see that their reinvestment capacity would actually, like what Nash is saying, it would be at subsistence level. And then I like the fact that some of the things that we had already identified, Owen actually said they've been kind of addressed, because there was also climate risk as well. In terms of impact on scalability, I think the strength for me, a proof of concept, like they'll just tell you that this can really go big. I mean, all of the improvements that have happened would actually, it's more like mitigation of some of the things that we've seen. So in terms of, storage and just going for innovation in terms of packaging, again, that's what I saw. So the impact on scalability wouldn't be a high, especially now based on what we're hearing are the improvements. Because as I mentioned, as Seriti discovers, the rate of adaptability for me is mind-blowing. There are changes that keeps on going, but I think the bottom line, honestly, is that it proves that this is a model that would generate income. And for scalability, I like what also Sipe mentioned, the blend of community enterprise revenue, would have to come in, and strategic partnerships as well. That is how you would actually circumvent that. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. That is awesome. I also got a really interesting question from William, and I think it's so important. He's asking about the challenges and the drawbacks, that you face. Nothing is just sunshine and roses. So he's asking about the challenges of infrastructure maintenance, vandalism, security. How are they dealing with power dynamics within the co-ops and even with the tribal council? So, Tiru, will you be able to give us some feedback on that?
Yes. Good morning, colleagues. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, Tiru, we can hear you. You can go ahead. Just put up your volume.
Okay. No, the current situation with security on site is much better since we have security on site. However, this was not always in the case. I mean, when we were starting the program, the community that was involved in the program had to take some initiative. We actually went on site and guarded materials overnight. When we received.
Sorry, Tiru. Tiru, sorry, your sound is really, really bad. I'm gonna ask us to move on to the next question. Thank you. So just to just in summary, yes, of course, problems always exist. We had to and were able to, with the solar system, being able to put up cameras, as well as lights during the night. And that assisted a lot in terms of security. We also employed a security company just to assist us and to ensure that, you know, everybody's safe, and everything is managed from that point of view, and that helped a lot. I think the biggest point that I've seen, and when you go to Deelpan and you speak to the community, what happened was that when people started to work and having this goal of working, everybody there will tell you how crime has just went down like tenfold. There was a purpose, there was a goal, and because there was buying in this Agri-Node, we had little to know to date issues in terms of security. Okay, so the next question from Alfred is, how do you secure markets for farmers? Do you sign contracts? So yeah, so how do we assist in production for a volume, to create the volume? How does each individual farmer get this profit from the sale of profits? I think that's a very direct question. CP, can you maybe just help us there?
All right, thank you, Mr. A. In terms of the market, you know, for the farmers, so the multifunctional agri-node, it serves like you know, as an aggregation point for all the farmers, you know, that we are supporting. So as the multifunctional you know, agri-node you know, produces, and then they supplement in terms of you know, of meeting the market demands, then it's supplemented by the farmers that we are also you know, working with. So us engaging on behalf of the farmers, you know, the relevant markets also helps in terms of securing the market. And as you may know, that the markets, you know, they've got their own requirements, you know, so we assisted the farmers in terms of meeting those requirements, such as producing, you know, quality produce, give them technical support in terms of that. And, you know, volumes, then that's where the aggregation, you know, comes in. So because these, the individual farmers, you know, that we are working with, they are not, when they trade, it's not like they combine, you know, all of that, such that there is a need of sharing of profits, blah, 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 and all of that. So they trade as individuals. So if we are aggregating and you contribute like 10, 20 cabbages, then it means you're gonna be getting the money for the produce that you have contributed. So I think that answers, you know, in terms of the sharing of profits and stuff, and also the how do we secure the markets, you know, for the farmers. So we've been implementing, you know, that sort of a model. So I think partnerships also play a very, very, you know, key role. And we do have off-take agreements. At the moment, it's for chilies, have like off-take agreements for chilies. Then for vegetables like cabbages and stuff, we're still relying on you know, on the relationships that we have with the markets. You know, because when it comes to vegetable, there are a lot of you know, requirements, including the compliance you know, standard, which is something we are also working on. So we haven't secured, you know, the off-take agreement, signed agreement, but farmers can still benefit because we have a good relationship with the market, so they can take the produce from our farmers. But in terms of having agreements, it means now we need to be compliant even when it comes to food safety standard, which is something we are currently working on. but for chilies who have offtake agreement already that farmers are also benefiting from. Thank you.
Thank you, Sipe. I look at the time and I see we've got 5 minutes left. I have one more question, which I think it's an important question in terms of if we look at the success of Deelpan, and the opportunities that was created within this short period of time. The question that comes is what are the possibilities? And I think the answer is there's a big possibility, but replicating this model in other rural communities. What are the risks and what are the opportunities of doing this model in other parts of South Africa? Tanashi?
Just as so a quick point is it is a replicable model. As long as there were principles that we kind of teased out in the presentation. One of which I think was implied in our, and then Juanita kind of just brought it out, co-creation, having community buy-in, having your community being part of the process of finding solutions that work for them, and instead of imposing the innovations. So ownership is an important key amongst other principles. And then I think there is an element that we might have underplayed a little bit, but it has a lot to do with the shared vision. You know, if you have a willing community that is passionate, that is driven, whose bigger goal is to achieve something more than just income for themselves, you are more likely to have these benefits spilling over and achieving all of the goals and exceeding those within the short period of time. So a lot can go well with a community that has bought in and that has shown a willingness and a passion to achieve a shared vision. I think, it's more philosophical now, but I think that is one of the baseline qualities of a project that is likely to succeed. If you don't get through that hurdle, I think you've significantly reduced your chances of success or replicating.
Thank you, Tanashi. Thank you. So with that, we've come to the end. Thank you everyone for your comments, beautiful comments that we received and the questions. We are grateful to be able to share this with you. Thank you for your interest and your continued support, and for all the work that's happening in Deelpan. So on behalf of the entire team, we wish you well and look forward to engaging with you again in the near future. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.